Hi, welcome to my channel where we question everything. Today's topic is military affairs or politics, and the topic is what we are all talking about, the dirty bomb. Now, I just want to state from the start off, a dirty bomb is not a nuclear bomb. It doesn't have the fission action of splitting atoms. It does not release that amount of energy, but it is radioactive. And what a dirty bomb in effect is, it is a package, a radioactive material at its core, some of explosives. You can form, for the general public, I would say TNT or plastic explosives. And the purpose is basically to explode or activate the explosive, and the explosive vaporizes the radioactive material. And what you then do is you create a radioactive zone, contaminated zone. That is how a dirty bomb is supposed to function. It has no military value whatsoever. No military will use a dirty bomb because it's just normal explosives. And if you make a certain area reactive, then even your own soldiers cannot enter that region. So what's the purpose? But it has a terrorist type of application. So if you are a terrorist, then you would like to have a dirty bomb in order to explode it into a certain build-up, high-density civilian area, in order to contaminate that area and expose as much as civilians as possible to radioactive material. And because it is fine, these people will inhale it, and then it enters their body, and then you will get either lung cancer or cancer of some other different organs. Now, just for its intersect, in the Iraq war and the Afghanistan war, the Americans have used depleted uranium projectiles. If you haven't heard about that, that is basically spent uranium material that is a lot heavy. It's very heavy, heavier than any other available material. And they use it as a kinetic projectile into an anti-tank weapon or ammunition for armor piercing. Because it is very heavy, and as it goes, it generates a lot of momentum, and thereby it can penetrate certain armor. But unfortunately, when it enters the armor, there's a certain amount of this material that evaporates, turns into dust, and then it becomes a radioactive contamination of that area. And there was a huge increase in cancer cases in Iraq, especially Fallujah, where there were a lot of children born with defects, and also in Afghanistan, where they picked it up. There were a lot of increases of cancerous patients, or increase in that cases. Yeah, right. So we know what the effect would be of radiation, and a dirty bomb would be very similar to the Chernobyl accident. Maybe on a lot smaller scale, but it will still be. Now, when we look at the events in Ukraine and the Russian military operation, then before we start in February, Zelensky always talked that he wanted to obtain nuclear weapons. And that was one of the reasons why Russia started their military operation, special military operation. And lately, in the last couple of months or so, he started the narrative that Russia will use tactical nukes and then NATO must react, and the West must react, and they retaliate, and then bomb all the troops, Russian troops, and so on, with nuclear weapons. So for one or other reason, Zelensky is on the nuclear path. You can also see they have been bombing or attacking the Zaporizhzhia nuclear power plant, the biggest in Europe. And although against all warnings from the Russians, they still continue to do it till date. Even with the AIEA inspection team there. So it seems to me basically they want to create an incident, a nuclear incident. Why? I don't know. So one has to look at that. But I really don't understand, because it will only be catastrophic for the whole Europe and for Ukraine itself. It will destroy Ukraine forever. And I don't understand why the Western supporters don't not discipline Zelensky, but give him some instruction not to do this. So now we have heard from the Russian military ministry that Zelensky is now planning on assembling a dirty bomb, and that they are in the very advanced stages, and the Russians believe it will happen anytime. And the Russians now have found all the ministers of defense of Britain, France, Turkey, and even America. And even the generals have talked to each other, the military commanders of Russia and France and England. So it's a serious business. And then even Russia went to the UN Security Council and even informed them. Now, naturally, the response of the Western media and governments is that Russia is lying, there's no evidence, and Zelensky says, effectively, the Russians are planning things like that. But there's no logic in that. Why would the Russians do that? Like I said, if it's a military, it has no military benefit. If you contaminated the area, you also contaminate for your own citizens. And since Russia's stated objective was always to protect or to liberate a Russian-speaking population in Ukraine, why would they contaminate those same people? Doesn't make sense. But the cat is now out of the bag. So if Zelensky has planned to do it, and they have the means of doing it, there are multiple nuclear waste sites in Ukraine, so they can get the material easily. They have nuclear experts because they are operating nuclear facilities, power generations. So from a technical point of view, the Ukrainians have the capability of creating a dirty bomb. The question is, where would they use it? Well, using it in an open plain like in the north will make no sense. So you have to do it in a populated area. That means a town or a city. But again, why would you do it in a town? You would rather do it in a city. And then you have to ask yourself, are they going to use a Ukrainian city, or you're going to use a Russian-occupied city? So the question is, say, as an example, will they use it in Odessa, or will they use it in Kherson? Now, unfortunately, this is radioactive material, and it can be traced, what I understand, but I can be corrected, by satellites. So if they move it in bulk, or don't screen it properly, then the satellites will pick it up properly, the radioactive material. But in any case, since the Russians have made it known to the world, that is very similar to, well, then it's obvious they can't do this secret operation anymore. And if I think back, there was about a couple of months back, there was also Russian warnings of a false flag operation planned by the Ukrainians, where they wanted to shoot some civilian people and blame them again on Russia. And when they basically made it known, then it didn't happen. Now, unfortunately, that's a two-edged sword. There's no real answer. Did they plan it or didn't they plan it? If they planned it, they've now been fooled. If they didn't plan it, then it was a false warning. So how do you know really whether it happens or not, and whether they were planning? So the question now is, do I think they will do a dirty bomb? And I would say no. There's no benefit except, there's no benefit for anybody except public propaganda. Yeah. So basically Ukraine will get some PR hopefully effect of that, but that can also boomerang. Because, like I said, a dirty bomb is not a nuclear bomb, it's not a nuclear reaction, and it will not trigger, basically, a reaction from NATO. And it will also not be supported by the civilian people that are being brainwashed in the West. So I believe that the PR value of this type of bomb is very little compared to the huge damaging effect it will have on the Ukrainian soil and population. Then I would also like to know that there are some punters that are saying again, if this happens, then that would be a red line, and then NATO would join the fight, or they might do a missile strike. But I would like to remind the viewers again, this is not Syria. You know, when the false flag was done in Ghouta in Syria, and the Syrian army was alleged of having a chemical attack, then that would have been a red line for Obama, and then he would have bombed Syria, which did happen. Like, he did use it, but later in a different Duma, I believe. And but that was a missile attack from NATO on a fairly weak and defenseless country. You cannot use the same type of argument to say, but this would be a red line for NATO, and NATO will respond with some form. If NATO responds, then we have World War III. There will be no doubt about that. If NATO enters the Ukrainian war in whatever action they do, even on a limiter, sending 1,000 troops into Ukraine, that's it. They are part of the war. That's a red line. What bothers me a little bit about the whole story is that there's a narrative, continuous narrative from the pro-Russian guys. Zelensky is not in charge. Zelensky is a puppet. Zelensky is so-and-so, and he's controlled by the Americans and NATO. Now, so if you say that, then NATO has planned the dirty bomb. So I don't understand this narrative. And then on the other side is when this dirty bomb comes up and all the other stuff, the bad things that the Ukrainians are doing, then it's always Zelensky that's doing it. It's never the NATO handlers. And if you look at how Zelensky has operated, like I said in my previous videos, he doesn't ask for assistance, he demands assistance, which is a sign that he has been told by these handlers that his handlers and the countries NATO will support him in all his decisions. And he's now demanding that support. So he's sort of a PR person on his videos. He's the face of Ukraine, trying to beg or demanding basically weapons and financial assistance from the West. So On the one side, you have the handlers. On one side, you would like to blame Zelensky personally. So which one is it? You got to decide. And don't tell me that, yeah, this was a secret operation by Zelensky's own devices and the Americans didn't know about that. That's nonsense. The Americans knew about that. They have spies and collaborators in the Ukrainian systems, the same as the Russians have. That's why the Russians know about this. This is proper, intelligent, spy type of information. So, unfortunately, at this stage, my conclusion to the whole matter is it would have been a futile, stupid action of using a dirty bomb. But the Ukrainians are crazy enough of doing it. Who initialized it? I don't know. We can only guess, but then we guess either Zelensky's SBU, the Nazis, or Americans, but we can never know that. And will they go ahead? Will it happen now? No, the cat has been left out of the bag, so everybody knows about it. So there's no more surprises. And if, say, all these things did happen, and the Russians didn't warn the world, would NATO have joined, and America have joined the conflict? No. I think we're always talking about the Third World War. I believe that the chance of the Third World War in Ukraine is 0.001%. And the only reason why there's a 1% is because there might always be some stupid, idiot, psychopath that pushes the button. Nobody's really that stupid. There are clever people in the West, and there are clever people in Russia in the East. Doesn't make any of these parties right or wrong. I mean, just for the sakes, if you buy shares, there's always a guy that believes the share price will go up. And there's always a guy, a counterparty to that person, that says the share price will fall down, go down. And that's why he sells to the one that's more optimistic. So you have always two people that are in opposition to each other, and they believe different systems. Both of them are highly intelligent. They see the world a little bit different. Because nobody can really predict the future. So I wish also that people in the West and in the pro-Russia will stop believing that the West is dumb and idiots and they are blind, and no, they are not. In any case, that's my story for today. All this story, I believe, my conclusion is all this is hype. If there was a clandestine operation, that has now been destroyed. So I don't expect much to happen in the future. So until next time, cheers.